Hello Internet, I'm John Ribbins, I'm Creative Director at Roll7. I've designed a lot of OlliOlli, which is excitingly coming to PlayStation 4 now. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to do a little video that explains some of the stuff that's come up for the Vita version and Steam version, things that people have struggled with, things that people found challenging, and kind of just give you a bit of an insight into how to get the best scores, how to get the most speed, and how to basically be a boss at the game. Anyway, on with the show. Okay, so first things first, I highly recommend you actually just go and play the tutorial, because a lot of the stuff I'm going to cover here will actually teach you how to do it in the tutorial. I kind of want to talk around those things and maybe give you a bit more insight. Like, the main key to getting high scores in OlliOlli is to just learn your perfect landings and learn your perfect grinds. These don't just increase your score, but they also increase your speed and keep your momentum going, which means you don't need to push. And on the longer combos later, it's going to be really important to just be constantly nailing perfect grinds and perfect landings. Initially, you just start off with the easiest tricks. Just get the timing down for pressing X just before you hit the floor. The closer you are to the floor, the better the landing you'll get. If you get it right at the last minute, you get perfect. Perfect gives you that green flash at the bottom of the screen, and you get an extra 1 on your multiplier, and your score is like the biggest it can possibly be. There's an equivalent of that with grinds. So if you pull your grind direction just before you hit the ledge, the grind comes up in green too. That gives you a score boost and a speed boost as well. So really important to get the timing down. Perfect grinds, perfect landings. Once you've got those two, your scores are going to start to look way better. There's some other stuff that kind of doesn't get necessarily explained a great deal. One of those is riding nollie or fakie. So if I just do tricks normally, I'm just doing regular. Once you get a bit further on in the game, you'll learn how to do 180, so you can start doing tricks switch. You also can do tricks off the front of the board, which you do by tapping both the left and the right trigger at the same time. This makes your guide trick off the front of the board, and actually gives you slightly more points again. So if you're going to play something like spots mode, or you're going for a super high score, starting your combo just by tapping both those triggers and going into nollie just gives you that extra little boost on your score, can tip you over the edge and get you that #1 spot. So with grinds, the tutorial will basically teach you you pull the stick to grind. You can pull it in any direction, but in the tutorial you're only going to get shown to pull down to grind, which will do a nose slide. You can actually pull any direction on the analog stick as you approach a grind, so to do all kinds of different ones. So pulling to the right as nose grind, pulling to the left as a 5-0. Once you get really comfortable with those and you can start pulling any of those as perfect grinds, you can start adding modifiers to them. So if you hold a trigger at the same time as pulling the stick when you hit a grind, you'll do more advanced grinds like crooked grinds or blunt sides or nose blunt sides. Again, these grinds with the triggers are worth slightly more points, so it's worth, once you get comfortable with it, always throwing a trigger modifier onto the grind to get the maximum points possible. And again, make sure you're always landing them perfect. So the other important thing to know with scoring, obviously games like Tony Hawk's have kind of taught you to do lots of different grinds, right? So land that grind, trick, land another grind, and so on. Now, although that does increase your multiplier, a lot of the time you're only spending a very short amount of time grinding if you do that. And as you'll notice, your score for your grind increases the further you go. So the longer you hold a grind, the more points it's worth. So a lot of the time it's actually better, rather than trying to fit 3 grinds in on the ledge, but just holding 1 advanced grind for the whole length. So something that people we got a lot of feedback on Steam was people having some trouble tricking out of grinds. So obviously if I hold left, I'll do a 5-0. So if I do a 5-0 and then I release the stick to come out of the grind, I'll always do a heel flip, because flipping left will do a heel flip. But you can actually do any trick out of any grind. So if we look at something like a 360 flip, which you do by pressing right, then down, then left, I can actually land a 5-0, move the stick to the other side, and then 360 flip out. So you can combo between any of the grinds and tricks. This starts to get really important because the way that tricks work in OlliOlli is that the more that you do anything, the less points it's worth. So if I go back to the first level, which is pretty much just flat land, if I keep doing the same trick over and over again, it's going to become increasingly less valuable. So I keep doing big spin flips. You'll notice 1,430, 1,490, that one's worth more for no apparent reason. So the more you do the same trick, the less points it's worth. If I keep doing the same thing over and over again, like this big spin flip, you'll notice every time I do it, it's worth a little bit less every time. This will go on until the trick goes down to 75% of its original value, and then it will stop there. So when you're going for the biggest scores, you need to really vary up your trick set and make sure you're not doing the same thing over and over again, but actually throwing all of the different tricks you can. Again, like the tricks that use modifiers, the tricks that require you to hold left trigger or right trigger at the same time as doing them are always worth more points. So similarly, if I go back to the beginning again, something like a big spin flip that only does a 180 is still going to be worth more, give me a staircase, than a kickflip 360. So the first thing I want to talk about is perfect grinds. So the tutorial will teach you about perfect landings, which is pressing X to land when you're really close to the floor. And obviously a perfect landing gets you the most points possible. You get that green bar at the bottom to show you that the trick was perfect. You get the same thing with grinds. So if you pull the stick just before you hit the ledge, you get a perfect grind. I want to show you the difference between what happens if you don't perfect grind and you do. So if I don't perfect grind on this first spot, you'll see that I basically run out of speed after the second ledge and I can't progress. If I redo that again and I nail perfect grinds, I can get all the way to the end of the level, because every perfect grind gives you not just a points boost, but a speed boost as well. You can see that speed boost got me all the way through to the end, so I can actually get the best scores. So what I want to do is kind of like talk through this and talk about how we step up the score from just doing basic tricks through to doing some more complicated stuff. So the other thing is variety. It's really important to vary up your tricks. If I go through the level, I'm just going to do kick flips by pushing right and nose grinds by pushing right on the grinds as well. And try and get everything perfect too. So if we're doing the same trick, it's dropped in value every single time I've done it, and I end up with a score like around 18k. If I go back and even just vary it by doing kick flips and heel flips, so switching between left and right on nose grinds and 5-0s, by switching between left and right on the grinds, I should, fingers crossed, get a better score. So you can see that, like, by varying up your tricks, obviously every time you do the same trick it loses its value. So by varying it up even a little bit, it starts to make quite a big difference in your score. If you go to the trick tree and check it out, the grinds you'll get taught in the tutorial are basic grinds, which is just pulling the analog stick on its own. So either pulling it right for a nose grind, left for a 5-0, up for a tail slide, or down for a nose slide. If you use the triggers with those grinds, you add modifiers and you do more complicated grinds like crooked grinds, board slides, and so on. Those tricks are worth considerably more points than just the basic ones. So if you're going for score, it's definitely worth throwing modified grinds the whole time. So if I go through again and I'll try and throw modified grinds and everything with just kick flips and heel flips, yeah, you can see I almost doubled the score I had previously. So then expand it further, and you won't actually be challenged to do this in the game until you get to the pro levels, but you can start to use spins on the left and right triggers as well. Spins don't actually give you more points, but they do add to your multiplier. So if you throw a spin between every single trick, you're going to fall on your ass. So if you throw a spin between every single trick, you're actually adding a lot of X's to your multiplier. So even though I didn't make it to the end there, I scored almost the same as I did when I went through just doing modified grinds. So another thing that actually, it only gets mentioned in a hint, and then we don't really talk about it that much, but it's being able to do tricks from nollie. You do nollie by pulling the left and right triggers at the same time when you're rolling along. Nollie tricks are automatically worth more than regular and switch tricks. So again, if you're going for score and you want to get the highest scores, it's worth always just popping the skater into nollie before you start your combo. So I'll demonstrate that here, just popping into nollie there at the start by flicking the triggers, and then again I'm just going to do kick flips, heel flips, 5-0s and nose grinds. So like 21k didn't boost it that much, but I think I messed some of those up. But overall it's definitely worth starting everything in nollie for that extra little bit of multiplier. I'm going to attempt, although probably mess it up, to demonstrate and kind of put all of that together. So try and do the hardest tricks which will involve modifiers, the hardest grinds which will involve modifiers, starting in nollie and then landing everything perfect. So we can kind of see the difference. Like with the basic tricks and basic grinds, you can get around 20k. Once you start throwing spins, you can start to get scores around 40k on this. So if we put all that together and try not to do any of the same tricks, we'll see what we can do.